Jeffrey Epstein is back in the news again. This time, if you have not heard, it appears that Marsha Blackburn actually has been requesting for Dick Durbin to basically subpoena to release the client list of Jeffrey Epstein. So to release those flight logs. I think a lot of us have been waiting to hear about that and see that. Now, what does this have to do with RFK Jr.? This is all connected. RFK Jr. has now been put back in the spotlight in reference to this issue as well, because this issue has come up again. We'll get to both of those. Let's get started with this hearing here with Dick Durbin, where it says Dick Durbin claims he had no reason to believe that Epstein's flight logs were worth seeing and thus subpoenaing. Listen to this. Now, this is Marsha Blackburn. Don't get it twisted. She's horrible when it comes to Israel and Gaza, just FYI. But she is calling for the request to release those flight logs.
Senator Blackburn, before you leave, I want to make a point for the record, since I understand you made some statements about the Jeffrey Epstein flight logs. There's a Fox reporter in the hallway who asked me about this, and I said I had not spoken to you one time about this issue.
Chairman Durbin, can I ask you a quick question? Why won't you subpoena Jeffrey Epstein's flight logs?
So who are you?
Hillary Vaughn with Fox.
Fox, of course. I don't know anything about his flight logs.
Why won't you subpoena them? Why don't you want to know?
I don't know the issue. I know who Epstein was, but I certainly don't know anything about the issue.
Well, he was charged with sex trafficking, so why don't you want to know who was utilizing his private plane?
Never been raised by anyone.
Well, Senator Blackburn has wanted to subpoena them, and there hasn't been a vote in your committee.
Said a word to me, not a word.
But aren't you curious, like, what high-profile or powerful people might be closeted predators and pedophiles? Doesn't that concern you?
Of course.
So why won't you subpoena them if you can?
It's the first time anyone has raised it. Thank you, Fox.
So are you curious about it? Will you do it?
I think you'll back me up on that. I'm not mistaken. I didn't know that this was even a subject of your amendments, which, if you'll recall, you were the first on the list until the 2-hour rule was invoked. I don't know anything about this request on your part. I'll be happy to discuss it with you. But I haven't done any discussion with you to this point, correct?
Mr. Chairman, I know, and I think you're fully aware that I had 2 amendments, one dealing with Epstein and Sotomayor. I brought it up previously. We have such an issue in this nation with the sex trafficking, human trafficking rings that have proliferated across this country, and it is damaging the lives of women and girls. We have got to step up and help them. Getting to the bottom of what happened with this Jeffrey Epstein case is going to be an important thing to do.
Let me pause here for just a second. I'll come back in. You know why they don't want to do this? Why they don't want to release those flight logs? Because I'm pretty sure there are some very important names, very big names on those logs. Some people that you may admire. It might be people that I admire. We might be surprised who might be listed on there, but also there could be politicians that are listed on that list, celebrities, billionaires, millionaires on that list. I mean, it's not like poor people and working class people were hanging out with Jeffrey Epstein. They weren't hopping on his jet and going to his private island. No, these are people, these are powerful people who have money and influence. Those are the people that was on the jet. Could be all kind of names on there. Royalty, you never know. That's why he doesn't want to release it.
And it should be at the top of this committee's to-do list as we fight some of this proliferation of CSAM.
There were 122 amendments, I believe, filed. I did not know that you would have
177.
177 amendments filed. So I have to confess I didn't know that you'd offer that amendment. Happy to discuss it with you, but I want to point on the record. You and I have never personally discussed this, have we?
We talked briefly on the floor at the
You never mentioned
conclusion.
what the subject matter of your amendment was. You said you wanted to offer your
In
amendment.
committee, I brought up the subject matter of my amendments.
Not in my
3 weeks
presence.
prior. Yes, sir. It was, I'll pull the transcript for you.
I wish you would.
Thank you.
I wish you would.
Now, all of a sudden, he seems to be surprised, caught off guard by this. He was not aware of this, right? Sure. Well, now this is bringing RFK Jr. back into the spotlight around this particular issue because RFK Jr. did ride on Epstein's jet. Now, that wasn't a secret. He didn't keep that secret. He's spoken about this before, but apparently there has been a conflict or contradiction in reference to his story, which I'll explain that after you see this video. RFK Jr. had an interview recently on Fox News with Jesse Waters. I think this is his name. Yeah, Jesse Waters. And I want to go ahead and get to that discussion because apparently it was this interview that sent off alarms for Newsweek, who he apparently had an interview with before about his experience on Epstein's jet. Now, Newsweek is now saying that RFK Jr. lied to them. Based off of what he said in this interview here. So shout out to Case Study QB for this clip. RFK Jr. full interview asking if he would fire the FBI director, asked if he was on Epstein's jet, and Democrats trying to keep him off the ballots. Let's dive in here.
RFK Jr. is running for president, also a Catholic, and he joins me now. So would you, as president, fire the FBI director?
Well, I would certainly question him about these issues. I think you were right to point out the different application of ethics here on a kind of a political line. We were horrified during the 1960s that the FBI had infiltrated the civil rights movement. It infiltrated the anti-war movement. As you pointed out, after 9/11, it began infiltrating innocent Americans who were attending Mass. And in the last couple of years in COVID, DHS was found also to be doing the same thing with the medical freedom movement. So I think this is that where it should not be a partisan issue. We should all be concerned. My father, Jesse, in his first week as Attorney General, he was the senior law enforcement officer in the country. And of course, the Attorney General is in charge of the FBI as well. And he called all of the branch division heads into his office and said, I want you all to understand one rule, that during this administration, there is going to be no weaponization or politicization of law enforcement capacity in this country. If somebody's a Democrat or Republican, they get treated equally. And
well, that would mean that if you were president, you'd...
Let me pause here for a second. One other thing I want to add to, two things. Number one, things were a lot different during the time when his father and his uncle were in politics. Like, we didn't have, these super PACs and political action committees. Things are a lot different now in reference to what you can and cannot do. I think people could be a lot more bolder back then. But one thing I do want to say as well, I would not be surprised if the FBI knows about whose names are on that flight log. I would not be surprised if they know about the client list. I would not be surprised if the CIA knows about that client list. I think there are multiple agencies and people who are keeping this hush, and for particular reasons, because of the names. I wouldn't be surprised. Bill Clinton is probably on that list, right? He's been known to go to Jeffrey Epstein's island as well. So they are trying to protect very powerful people here, ladies and gentlemen. So even if someone like RFK Jr. were to win, would he even be allowed to fire the FBI director? I mean, yes, he has the authority to do that. But again, who are the other agencies, the other people in place behind the scenes, organizations like AIPAC, et cetera? What are they going to allow someone even like him to do? Let's continue here.
Have to fire the director because this guy is politicized the bejesus out of the Bureau. You weren't ever on Jeffrey Epstein's jet, were you?
I was on Jeffrey Epstein's jet 2 times. I was on it in 1993, and I went to Florida with my wife and 2 children to visit my mom over Easter. My wife had some kind of relationship with Ghislaine Maxwell, and they offered us a ride to Palm Beach. So I went then, and then on another occasion, I flew again with my family, with I think 4 of my children, and Mary, my wife, to Rapid City, South Dakota, to go fossil hunting for a weekend, and but otherwise I was never on his jet alone. I've been very open about this from the beginning. This was in '93, so it was 30 years ago. It was before anybody knew about Jeffrey Epstein's his nefarious issues, and I agree with you that all of this information should be released.
Let me just pause here for just a second. There's something else I want to add here. So here's the because in this interview, RFK Jr. said he flew on Epstein's plane twice. But earlier, when RFK Jr. announced his presidential race, and I covered this story about his connection to Epstein, at that point, he said he only flew once. Now he's saying he's flew twice. Could just be that he just forgot. I don't know. But the other thing that he says here is, well, back then, no one knew what Epstein was doing. People did know what Epstein was doing. Not everybody knew back then, obviously, but obviously people did know what he was doing. Otherwise, he wouldn't have had clients. He had clients for a reason. He had clients that he could call and say, hey, I got these girls. They knew what he was doing. The people on that client list knew exactly what Jeffrey Epstein was doing. So there were people that knew. And RFK Jr.'s voice sounds shaky here. Now, I know, he's talked about this before. He has a voice condition, but he just seems a little bit nervous here in reference to this particular topic. But I'm going to show you in just a second what Newsweek said, because I told you, I'm like, this story is starting to change because that's not what was said before.
And we should get real answers on what happened to Jeffrey Epstein and any of the high-level political people that he was involved with. All of that should be open to the public. It should be absolutely transparent. And, I don't see why any of those records would have any redactions in them. Why would we be hiding that from the American public?
Well, you might not.
This is RFK Jr. trying to play dumb, though. He knows exactly why that would be hidden from the American public, because of the the profile of the people that are probably on that list. So he knows
if those records would have any redactions in them. Why would we be hiding that from the American public?
Well, you might not even
outrageous.
Get a chance to do that because Mark Elias, a hotshot Democrat election attorney, is trying to basically kick you off ballots.
Okay, so then they go into the ballot access issue there. But let me show you where the difference comes in, people. This is Newsweek. Now, this was released yesterday. They said RFK Jr. caught in a lie about Jeffrey Epstein flight. Dun, dun, dun. It says here, RFK Jr. stated in a televised interview on Tuesday that he had flown on Jeffrey Epstein's private jet twice, weeks after telling Newsweek that he had only taken one flight on the late financier's aircraft. So let me jump down to this piece here. I picture something else. It goes on to say here, Tuesday on Fox News, Jesse Watters primetime host Jesse Watters said that Senator Dick Durbin, an Illinois Democrat, is blocking the release of flight logs to Epstein's jet. Several minutes after the discussion, Watters welcomed Kennedy onto his show to discuss unrelated matters. Here's what RFK Jr. told Fox News. I was on Jeffrey Epstein's jet 2 times. I was on it in 1993. I went to Florida with my wife and my 2 children to visit my mom over Easter. My wife had some kind of relationship with Epstein's then partner, Ghislaine Maxwell, and they offered us a ride to Palm Beach. First of all, what is some kind of relationship? Was she friends with Ghislaine Maxwell? Like, were they acquaintances? Like, what do you mean some kind of relationship? So there's that. And so then it goes on to say here, Kennedy added that on another occasion, I flew again with my family with, I think, 4 of my children and wife, Mary, to Rapid City, South Dakota to go fossil hunting for a weekend. Otherwise, I was never on his jet alone. I've been very open about this from the beginning. This was in 1993, so it was 30 years ago. It was before anybody knew about Jeffrey Epstein's nefarious issues. Remember, I said, obviously, it's not before anybody knew because he had a client list. And I agree with you that all this information should be released and we should get real answers on what happened to Jeffrey Epstein and any of the high-level political people that he was involved with. All of that should be open to the public. It should be absolutely transparent. Okay. Now, here's what RFK Jr. told Newsweek. Kennedy's recollection stands at odds with an emailed statement shared on his behalf with Newsweek on October 31st, in which a spokesperson for the former Democrat stated that he had only flown one time on Jeffrey Epstein's private plane. The occasion that Kennedy's spokesperson informed Newsweek about was the flight in 1993 from New York City to Palm Beach, Florida, when he visited his mother for Easter. It goes on to say here, Mary, Kennedy's wife, and 2 other kids were on a flight. Mary knew Epstein's girlfriend, Ghislaine Maxwell, who learned they were going to Palm Beach for Easter and offered their family a ride. The spokesperson added that the private jet trip was made possible by Kennedy's then partner, Mary Richardson Kennedy, who was friendly with Maxwell. Kennedy separated from his first wife, Emily Black, in 1992. Their divorce was finalized in 1994, the same year that he married Richardson Kennedy. Kennedy filed for divorce in 2010 from Richardson Kennedy, who died in 2012. Kennedy has been married to Curb Your Enthusiasm star Cheryl Hines since 2014. Okay. Updated statement to Newsweek. When contacted by Newsweek on Wednesday, that was yesterday, a spokesperson for Kennedy shared an updated statement that read, Mr. Kennedy flew 2 times on Jeffrey Epstein's private plane. So I don't know. But long story short, what can I say other than obviously it sounds like there's some inconsistency there in the story. But the reality is those names should be released. Let's go to the poll. So what do you think is going to happen in reference to Epstein's list? Will Congress release Jeffrey Epstein's list? 14% of you say yes if there's public pressure. 54% of you say no under any circumstance. And 20% of you say some names may be released. And 12% of you say that you are not sure. Interesting. Thank you guys so much. If you haven't had a chance to do so, go ahead and smash that like button. That helps you out with the algo. Thank you so much.